So we've been waiting years and years and years for a brand new pair of red Yeezys ever since the Red Octobers, and as we neared a decade from when that shoe first released, I guess we all thought that the Adidas Kanye was not a Kanye that put out red sneakers. But it turns out we were all wrong, and we're finally getting a brand new pair of all red Yeezys, but maybe not the pair that you would have expected. Okay, maybe you were expecting it because this shoe's been leaked for like 2 years, but it's a pair of foam runners. Not 350s, not 500s, foam runners. What's up everybody, I'm Seth Fowler, and today I'm reviewing the upcoming Adidas YEEZY Foam RNNR Vermilion. You know what's interesting about this shoe? Depending on the kind of light that you see it in, it almost completely changes color. I noticed when I was filming B-roll for this shoe, it looked like a very orangey red, but now that I'm holding it in hand in front of all the studio lights, it kind of looks like more of a pinkish red. I mean, not that that's a bad thing. I'm definitely not mad at the fact that the shoe really changes color depending on the lighting situation, but it's something that you wouldn't have expected, and if you look at just the promo images that Adidas puts out, it's not going to look exactly like that. At least not in every lighting situation. If you're watching this review, it's probably because you're trying to decide whether you should pick up this shoe or not, or if you are trying to grab this shoe, when it's releasing and how much it'll cost. And the good news is, I have all those answers. The Adidas YEEZY Foam RNNR Vermilion releases on October 29th for a retail price of $80. Before we dive any deeper into the shoe though, let's take a quick look at the box. So this is pretty much a standard YEEZY Foam RNNR box. It's plain, it doesn't really have any branding on the outside. There is a size tag right up there in the corner. The bigger tag right here is the GOAT tag because I bought this shoe on GOAT Instant Ship. And then when you open up the box, you'll notice that the only branding is actually on the inside. You've got foam printed in this sort of blackish brownish color. You've got runner printed on the bottom part of the inside of the box, and then of course you've got your pretty much standard Yeezy paper. I don't know why they print this on the inside of the box. I mean, it doesn't really make that much sense to me. All the other Yeezys have printing on the outside, and it's not like this is an inverted box like a pair of off-white sneakers with the inverted Nike box. This just kind of seems like a kind of weird design choice. It's not a bad thing, but it's just kind of weird. I'm not sure exactly why they did it. But now that we've got the box out of the way, let's dive right back into the sneakers themselves. And also, let me just point out how good the brand new Vermilions look with a brand new pair of Apothecary socks. They look fresh, especially with this gray on gray colorway. And actually, funny story, the Apothecary tonal collection drops at around the same time as the YEEZY Foam RNNR Vermilions drop on Friday the 29th. So maybe, if you're grabbing a pair of Vermilions, you could also grab the entire Apothecary tonal collection, which is dropping at 11 a.m. Eastern time. It's a pretty dope collection, and there are 4 really solid colors. You've got brown, a sort of purpley pink color, which is kind of like a mauve. I don't really know exactly how to describe it. There's sort of a light tan color or a cream color, and then there's also a gray on gray, which you see me rocking with these shoes. So if you want to grab a brand new pair of socks to match your brand new Vermilions, or maybe your brand new sneakers of any kind, make sure to check out the Apothecary tonal collection that drops this Friday, October 29th at 11 a.m. Eastern time. But fit suggestions aside, I think that the Vermilions are one of the most interesting looking pairs of foam runners, and it's not for the reason that you might think. So the foam runner in general is a pretty wild looking sneaker. I mean, the overall construction of the shoe, the shape, the aesthetic of the sneaker is out there. And while it might seem like the more earth tone versions of the shoe, like the Ararats and the Ochres, which come in tan and brown, would be the more subtle and quieter options, but if you actually look at the Vermilion colorway of this shoe, more as a sneaker and less as sort of a pair of Yeezys, it really starts to look a lot more like a playful pair of Crocs. Like when I'm wearing this shoe, I feel like I'm wearing something more playful and something that you take a little bit less seriously, like a pair of Crocs. The Vermilion colorway just doesn't feel as much like a fashion statement. It feels more like a utilitarian kind of shoe that you wear to take your kids to daycare. And that's not a knock on the colorway. I love red. Red is my favorite color, but there's something about the red on this shoe that just makes it feel a lot more playful than I would like. The Ochre and the Ararat colorway, just to name a few, are much more subtle and much more fashion-focused sneakers. Like, they're not shoes that I would really see a dad wearing, you know what I mean? Like, it's kind of a sneaker that you wear to finish off your fit. I don't know if any of what I'm saying makes sense to you guys, but to me, this shoe feels a lot more playful and a lot more like something that you would rock to the beach, and the other shoes feel a lot more like fashion statements. Actually, let me know in the comment section down below if you guys agree or disagree. I feel like this could be one of the most polarizing pairs of foam runners, even though it's already a pretty polarizing silhouette. But diving into the materials of this shoe, it is actually a little bit different than most of the other foam runners. Yes, the shoe does still look generally the same, and it is still made up of foam, but what's interesting is that this shoe is actually manufactured in China. Now, that might not sound that crazy because most things are made in China, but what's interesting about this is that most foam runners are actually made in the United States. In fact, the only pairs that weren't made in the United States were the swirl pairs. Or I guess the MX pairs is what they're officially called. And I first noticed that in my first review of an MX pair. I saw in this little ankle area right here, it says made in China and not made in the US. And what's interesting about that is that the overall shoe actually feels different. The US pairs seem to be a little bit softer, a little bit more pliable. They seem to be a little bit smoother. And I think they're actually also made with algae-based foam. These Chinese manufactured pairs don't seem to be as soft. They have a little bit rougher of a texture, and they also fit a little bit differently. And I'm actually wondering why this pair in particular was made in China and not in the US. It seems like a relatively easy pair to make. Maybe it was a dye issue. Maybe the US manufacturing plant just could not produce this kind of red, and they had to go to China, which wouldn't surprise me. I think that's also why they went to China for the MX pairs, because they couldn't mix the way that they needed to mix for those colorways. But who knows? I have no idea why they did it. We're probably never gonna know, because why would they tell us that? But it's interesting, and it's something to keep in mind when you try this shoe on, because honestly, this shoe does not fit like a US made pair of foam runners. On a side note though, I'm always blown away by the foam runners manufacturing process. I'm assuming that it was a 3 or 4 part mold, and what's interesting about this shoe is that it's made up of one material and it's all one piece. There was no pieces glued together, it was all molded at once. And something that I like to do, because I'm a manufacturing nerd, I just did it professionally and just got really into it, is to look at all the seams on the sneaker, because if you look at where the seams are, that's where the two pieces of the mold came together. So if you look at each one of these seams, you can actually see where the different metal actions of the mold came together, and it gives you an idea of how they actually made this sneaker. It's pretty cool, and it's actually a much more interesting and complex process than you probably expect. You'd think that it would just be shot into a mold and that's it, but there's a lot of different things that you have to keep in mind, like the draft angles and being able to pull the mold apart, and if it's a material that's too hard, you're gonna have to use a different kind of mold material. It's all sorts of crazy stuff that you have to think about, and it's really cool to see that on a pair of sneakers that I enjoy as a sneakerhead. As far as the general shape of the shoe and where all the ventilation holes are placed, the shoe looks almost identical to every other pair of foam runners. Like I said though, the shoe does feel a little bit stiffer than other pairs of foam runners and also a little bit rougher. Not a huge deal, but it's something that I noticed. Continuing back in the shoe, you get to that super wide ankle opening that we've all become used to with pairs of foam runners. And like I mentioned before, around the top of the ankle opening on the medial side, you actually have some debossed text that reads Foam Runner 8 US made in China. Well, maybe yours doesn't say 8 US, it says whatever size you grabbed. And as you guys know, I'm a size 9 and I grabbed a size 8 because that's what I've done in the past. But it turns out this shoe actually fits very small. So unlike previous pairs of YEEZY foam runners, the Vermilions actually fit significantly smaller than I think we all would have expected. And actually, if you go to YeezySupply.com, they have these shoes listed and they actually say to grab a full size up from what you usually grab, which I don't think I've ever seen Adidas or YEEZY Supply recommend before. Maybe they did for the MXs, I don't know, I don't remember, but for this pair they recommend going a full size up, which is honestly probably the right move. I'd suggest either going with your true size or even going a full size up like they recommend, because this shoe definitely fits a lot smaller than any of the other foam runners that I've ever tried on. And it's weird to me that it fits so differently. Maybe this material cools differently than other foam runner materials. Maybe that's why they did it in China, because they didn't have this kind of material or this kind of foam. I have no idea why that is, but keep in mind, if you're grabbing a pair of Vermilions, grab your true size or a full size up. As far as the actual comfort of the YEEZY Foam Runner Vermilion, it does feel pretty similar to every other pair of foam runners. Like I said, it is a little bit stiffer than the other pairs, but it still feels very soft underfoot. And honestly, the foam runners are one of the most comfortable sneakers in my collection. The only thing I would suggest though, and I know this sounds like I'm just plugging Apothecary again, but I'm being serious, you definitely want to wear this shoe with a pair of crew socks, because if you wear them with low top socks or no socks, you're gonna get mad chafing around the ankle area. Maybe that's not true for everyone, but I wore a pair of foam runners to the beach multiple times, and every time I got crazy blisters on the back of my ankle, and it sucked, and it wouldn't have happened if I had just worn a pair of crew length socks. I probably shouldn't wear them to the beach though, because who wears crew length socks to the beach? No one. So maybe don't wear these to the beach. One thing I really like about the inside of the foam runners is that they have this sort of massaging textured insole, and to be honest, you can't really feel it after you've worn the shoe for more than a couple minutes, but when you first put your foot into the shoe, you kind of feel it underneath your heel for a little bit, and it feels great. And then you kind of get used to it, and then it still feels fine. So just a nice, interesting detail. And I realize this is probably completely pointless to point out, but these shoes are very well ventilated, as you can probably tell. Finally, moving to the bottom of the sneaker, you've got your herringbone traction pattern. I don't know if this material is as durable as the algae-based foam that you have on some of the other foam runners. It seems like it's actually worn down a little bit from just that one wear of me trying this shoe on, but it is what it is. Another thing that I really love about the bottom of the foam runners is that the heel area kind of swoops up in the back, which I love, because when you're driving, it allows you to rest your heel on the ground and then slowly sort of lean into the gas pedal, which I think is awesome. Very nice little subtle detail. I love it on the 380s. I love it on the foam runners. It's just a nice touch, and it makes this shoe a little bit more comfortable than it already is. So overall, I'm going to give the Adidas YEEZY Foam Runner Vermilion an arbitrary Seth score of Alright. Honestly, I love the YEEZY Foam Runner. I think it's one of the best shoes of 2020, but unfortunately, in my opinion, comfort-wise and even aesthetically, the Vermilion is kind of the worst version of that shoe. Not saying it's a bad shoe overall, it's just my least favorite of all the other foam runners. If you love red and you've been waiting for a pair of foam runners in red, this is definitely the shoe to go for, and the retail price of 80 bucks is pretty much unbeatable. But if you're like me and you don't really feel like you need this shoe, I don't think it's a bad thing if you decide to pass it up. But now I would love to know your thoughts on the Adidas YEEZY Foam Runner Vermilion, and whether this is a shoe that you're planning to pick up this Friday, or whether you're planning to pick up any of the Apothecary socks also dropping this Friday. So make sure to let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't yet, and I'll see you all in the next one.